All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something really fascinating today, a total paradox when it comes to creativity. It's all based on the work of a poet, Mark Stewart. Now, he's a haikuist, right? A master of what's probably the most visual kind of poetry out there. But, and here's the kicker, he can't see a single thing in his mind's eye. So, this is where it all began for him. For almost 40 years, Stewart just assumed that when people said, "Picture this in your mind's eye," they were just, using a colorful expression. Kind of like saying you have butterflies in your stomach. You don't literally have butterflies, right? He got the concept, but he had no idea that for other people, a whole movie was actually starting up behind their eyes. And that's really the heart of it. Can you just imagine that for a second? The moment you realize that pretty much everyone else is walking around with a built-in movie theater in their head, and you're not? That quiet shock of finding out that your internal world is just built differently? So that sets up this incredible paradox. A writer who can't see, who can't visualize, how in the world does he create an art form that's all about images? So for Mark Stewart, when he tries to think of a beach, he doesn't see waves or sand or anything like that. He just sees what he calls a big, black nothing. It's not scary or empty. He says it's actually kind of comfortable and familiar. There's just no movie playing. All he has is the idea of a beach, the concept, just sitting there where, for most of us, a picture would be. And yeah, he's a haiku poet. This is the paradox that's just so wild, right? Haiku is literally designed for the reader to take a few words and build this incredibly vivid scene in their head. So how can someone who's, for all intents and purposes, mind-blind, not just do it, but be amazing at it? Okay, think about the most famous haiku ever, the one by Basho. Old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. When I say that, you probably see it, don't you? The still water, the little frog, the splash. We're always told that's the whole point of haiku. But what if you read Old Pond and you just know what it is, you get the concept, but you don't actually see a pond at all? So to really get our heads around this, we need to pull back a bit from his personal story and look at the actual science here. Because it turns out our mind's eye isn't just an on or off switch, it's a whole spectrum. And there's a name for this. It's called aphantasia. It's the inability to voluntarily create mental images. Your mind's eye is essentially blind. And it's really important to know this isn't a disorder or something wrong. It's just a different way of experiencing the world. It's thinking, but without the pictures. And Stewart has these great metaphors for the spectrum. On one end, you've got hyperphantasia. These are people with super vivid, movie-like recall. It's like they have these private galleries in their heads. Then on the other end, you have aphantasia, which he says is more like having catalog descriptions. You've got all the facts. You know the stone is smooth, rough, warm. You just don't have the photo of the stone. And get this. This isn't some incredibly rare thing. We're talking about maybe 2 to 4% of the population having some form of aphantasia. That's potentially 1 person in every 25. It just goes to show so many of us are just walking around assuming that the way our brain works is the way everyone's brain works, but that's not true at all. All right, so this leads us to the big question. If haiku isn't just about pictures, what's the secret sauce? What makes it work? Well, it turns out the magic isn't in what the poet puts in, it's in what they leave out. And this is where we get into this beautiful Japanese concept called ma. It means the space, but it's not just empty space. It's an active silence, a pause that's full of potential. Think of it this way. If a classic Western poem is like a giant, detailed painting, a haiku is more like a couple of brushstrokes on a huge canvas. The ma is the rest of the canvas, and that's the part where your mind gets to step in and play. And the way haiku creates that space is with something called kirei, which means the cut. This is the real trick. The poet puts 2 different things side by side, but doesn't explain how they're connected. They just leave a gap, a cut. And it's in that gap that your brain leaps across and creates a spark of meaning. It's genius. So what this all means is that haiku is basically a collaboration. The poet gives you a few fragments. The cut, the kirei, creates that gap. And then it's up to you, the reader, to fill in that space, the ma. The moment doesn't just live on the page, it comes alive inside of you. Okay, so let's bring this all back to our poet's paradox. If haiku is this big collaboration that happens in the space, well, then maybe a mental picture isn't the only thing the reader can bring to the table. Take a listen to this classic haiku by Issa. Winter fly,
I keep on hearing his small cry. You don't need to see that fly for the poem to hit you, right? It's not about the visual at all. It's about sound. It's about this tiny, fragile life. The poem lands in your mind's ear, not your mind's eye.
And here's another great example, this time from Mark Stewart himself, hitting another sense. Winter sunlight, warmth of stone on my palm. Again, you don't have to see a picture of the stone to feel that. The poem lands in your body. It triggers the memory of warmth, of texture. And that's it. That's the answer to the whole puzzle. For an aphantastic mind, a haiku isn't a picture. It works by tapping into all these other things. It's a structure. It's a sensation. It's a sudden shift in meaning. It's like a tiny machine built to create an emotional texture.
And this really opens up into a much bigger idea, right? This isn't just about how to write poetry, it's about how we notice things and what the mind decides to keep. Listen to this haiku from Stewart about memory. Only yesterday, the man I was, fading fog. This is how he experiences memory. It's not like flipping through a photo album. It's more like a shape losing its form, its edges just dissolving. That fading fog isn't something he sees. It's an emotional weather. It's the feeling of a past self slipping away.
So, when you boil it all down, writing haiku isn't really about seeing pictures in your head. It's about noticing moments in the world. The real tool here, the most important one, is just attention. And that's something we all have, no matter what our inner world looks like. And this final thought from Stewart just nails it. Haiku doesn't ask you to see anything. It only asks you to notice what remains. It strips an experience down to its very core, and what's left behind might be a picture for some people. But for others, it might be a sound, a feeling, a concept, or just a shape. Which leaves us with this final, kind of profound question. Mark Stewart didn't just find a way to make art despite his aphantasia. He learned how to make art from it. He used the mind he actually has. So what about you? Take a second and think about your own inner world. When all the noise and all the details fade away, what does your mind keep?